Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Paul Suter, Director of Community Services, and I'm pleased to be here this evening for a brief update on the newly formed Community Services Department. Earlier this year, we thought it was a good idea to just bring Council up to speed and working on as far as some statistics that are in here, as well as maybe some reasons behind the merger, as well as what some of the challenges we've seen and what we're working on in the future. So. We merged, basically you had recreation and culture, which merged with FCSS, Community Social Development, Child Care, Youth Center. And on the surface, those would seem, maybe not in the same path, but at the end of the day, they're all delivering services for the residents. And when you actually look at what happened earlier this evening with the report that was presented to Council just previously here, that was an example where we had FCSS, Youth Center, some advisory committee work, recreation, all working together for an end goal. And I think in the past, a lot of that work was happening sometimes almost in opposing paths, if that makes sense. A lot of overlap, and we're trying to break down those department lines so that we're working as a unified team. And that example we just saw with Mr. Stenhouse presenting that and Council supporting it, that's a classic example of what we're trying to work towards. And our hope is that we can really move forward with a lot more topics, a lot more goals as a collaborative team. We recently just had a full team meeting, which was the first time we all got together. And the feedback has been tremendous from the staff as far as getting to know people in different business lines, as we call it, within the department. And, getting to know them, what they do, understanding their work, and then seeing where there's some synergies and some overlap that they can work together to not replace what they're doing, but I see it as enhancing what they wanted to do. So it's like your family just got bigger, so to speak. So we're quite excited. So we've got a brief slideshow we'll go through here. Next slide, please. There you go. So I just sort of hit on some of this page already, and we formed this department earlier in 24 and allowed us to look at everything with recreation, social culture, with kind of the same lens, the same leadership group, same direction as a cohesive unit to look at how we can solve some of the community's issues that cross a lot of boundaries in this space. Because truly, culture, recreation, social well-being, they all touch each other, they all overlap. They're all, in my mind, and a lot of our mind, I think, living in the same space. So that's sort of the impetus behind why the department was formed, with the two going together. I mean, typically we had some vacancies, and we looked at how to be more efficient with what we're doing going forward with our structure, and that was the decision that was launched earlier this year. Next slide. So the core areas are the Community Service Administration, which was formerly the Recreation Administration. We have the Recreation proper, the Arts and Culture team. The Community Center falls within us, FCSS, Family and Community Support Services, Early Child Care Center and the SAS School Age Site, and Chantal Brube Community Youth Center. Next slide. So I won't bore you with these next three slides. They're just sort of a sanitized org chart of the overall structure with myself and the three managers, and then the pillars break out from there, basically, touching on those core areas. They're all, you have it in your package, so if you really want to look through it, you can. So we'll just skip over that quickly. One more, yeah. So the business lines. Yeah. Some of the highlights that we've been working on. I'm just going to look here because I can't see that far. Community Services Min. So we adopted a new policy and bylaw for committees. It was implemented earlier this year. Arts Advisory Committee, Rec and Culture, Youth Advisory, welcomed new members, refreshed approach, and including annual work plans and reporting to Council. And we have seen the fruits of that work already in numerous occasions. And I think the feedback with all the committees so far has been great. And we are really pushing through a lot of work coming even in the next couple months. We are limited just with the time that we can allot for these committees. Typically, they're an hour and a half once a month. We've taken the summers off because we realized in the past that's a challenge to get folks to get together in the summer. So there's a lot of stuff packed into each agenda, and we try our best to get through it. We've also done a grants policy and revision to that earlier this year. And the goal of the grants policy revision was to provide more transparency, equity, and a new approach to the program overall, so that the community can see what might fit in each particular area of the grants. And the hope is to get people into these streams where it fits and get some support for the groups and their initiatives. We've been looking at different ways to focus more energy around advertising and sponsorship. Our area does the bulk of advertising that folks want to partner with us, either for so rink board advertising or sponsorship for an event or a program. So previously, that was an activity that was sort of spread across a couple departments in the city. We've taken that in-house here because we end up delivering the end product anyway, so we'd rather work on the relationship from the front end and right through to the back end. We've also been continuing to work with our partners with the Beaumont Library. We look at them as what they deliver for some programs and services, ways we can work together with community services to enhance an existing program, whether they're running it, we're running it, how do we both benefit each other there. As well with Leduc County, our cost share partner for recreation. We're continuing to work with them on the future, and hopefully there's some traction going to be happening here shortly with some news there. Next slide. Recreation. This is kind of a bit of a stat page. The latest online registration day we feel was a success when you look back at what we've had challenges in the past. We had some in-house support to create a waiting room to help minimize the known issues and reduce frustration for users. We had a little hiccup at the start, but then it got off to the races shortly thereafter and went fairly well. We've seen, we pushed through in aquatics already the number of swimming lessons we delivered all last year. We've already done that number. And we're in a shutdown right now, so we won't be resuming here till a couple more weeks. But we've already exceeded the number we did last year, and we're only in September, so they're very busy in the pool. Same with our BSRC memberships, 934 monthly members, 272 annual members. On average, 17,000 visits per month, not including spectators for other activities. 50% of the people that come to the rec center are for the fitness center. So the fitness center is a very busy place when you think of that volume every month. Summer camps, whether summer in the park or registered programs, we had 448 participants in July and August. That's a lot of kids through the program. I mentioned earlier, September 16th, the pool shut down for a 5-week period for some maintenance. And the long talked about bouldering wall has now been installed. A bit of a hiccup to get that through the process, but I'm happy to say that it's here. It is open. And I haven't spoke with them this week to see what the uptake has been, but I'm hopeful it's going to be strong. As well as we've been working with our one of our sponsors, GFL Enviro, and minor football and high school football to help support home games at the multi-use field with temporary change rooms and spotting towers for their home games. Last Thursday, we actually had 2 visiting teams through Metro Athletics, not Beaumont teams, come to Beaumont and play each other at our facility. And that's an example of where we work with sponsors, we work with groups, and we try to deliver something that outside of the operational budget, if you will. We're just working together to see how we can deliver that to support those programs so that they can grow and then, as we saw, bring in even out-of-town teams to play each other, which I thought was really, really cool. Arts and culture. Continued growth with our civic events. We did some data gathering to try to track some numbers for Beaumont Days, and more than 4,200 people attended on Friday and 3,500 on Saturday. And those are conservative numbers. Those are just the numbers we could track. That doesn't count for a lot of other people that may have attended with those folks. So as you can see, that's a lot of people. Canada Day, 4,500, and 800 people came when we put on Edmonton Symphony Orchestra in the park. Great numbers, great attendance, worthwhile. It's good to see that growth. Remembrance Day, we brought that inside last year to the BSRC, 1,200 people. We were at maximum capacity there. So I would anticipate this year it'll be the same. I think it eliminates the weather factor for Remembrance Day, and I think that's what brings people out. So if we had a bigger facility, we might be able to exceed that number, but we are limited as to the capacity. So I don't know what we're going to do if we've got a lineup outside and turn them away. We might have to look at auxiliary screens in the gym or something. I don't know, but these are good news stories, Council. It's just sometimes those good news brings you more challenges, of course, right? So. And the last piece here is the grant applications. We're seeing those previously once not fully prescribed programs like community grants is now overprescribed. So some tough decisions are looming here as we move forward, whether we have to increase the funding envelopes for those in the future or whether we just have to be harder when it comes to the evaluation, whether it's the community grants program, the arts grants, or the new major operating project initiatives, which Council will see here next month, and that's going to be the first kick at that program. Community Center, another success story. Our rental bookings continue to grow annually, and our revenue is on track here to exceed last year. And we still maintain good relationships with our two anchor tenants in there, the Beaumont School of Dance on the second floor and the Black Gold Outreach School in the basement. So we are booking that facility for weddings, for example, 2 to 3 years out. There's not too many Saturdays left in the next 2 years, and there's no end in sight to that. So it's getting harder, I think, to get into that space, which is a good news. But once we hit capacity, then we hit capacity, and that'll be that. So we'll have to look for another space. Next slide. FCSS, 335 clients served as walk-in calls and intakes, 24 counseling referrals. Early childhood groups conducted 113 sessions with different age groups, 20 participants in high school mentorship programs, and 7 in-school youth information sessions have been delivered. So the group over there has, we've had some vacancies earlier this year. We've turned over some staff, and with that brings, learning curves. But we've got some tremendous folks in there now, and those numbers are likely to, as we track the data better going forward here, I fully anticipate we'll have much better data next year than we have seen to date. But they are busy. We're only working with a couple people over there, so that's a lot of work for a couple people. Next slide. ELCC, 25 new children started in September, with 5 more planned October 1st. There's currently over 60 on the wait list, so obviously the need is still there. And our construction for the expansion space to increase by 10 more spaces has been delayed for a variety of reasons. As you can appreciate, Council, we're working in an old space, so every time you open something up, you've got another problem you got to fix, so it's delayed some of that contracting work there. We're expecting to have it done and open for January 25, which will increase another 10 spaces. Hopefully the wait list hasn't grown by then, but we'll see. Next slide. The Youth Center, 2024 Youth Center visits to the center. Now, of course, a lot of these are repeat folks, but that's still a lot of people coming in and out of there, whether it's drop-ins or registered program. We're getting new management there, new supervisors starting here next month. We're looking at what ways to really make more use of that, trying to expand the programs that we have offered and trying to open it up for more activities, more programs, broaden the horizon there a little bit and see where it goes. So we're quite excited about that. Next slide. 24's focus, maintaining service levels and to ensure we're strong and responsive as our customer service and our community keeps growing. Continually working with our council committees to address community needs, and those conversations are ongoing outside of the monthly meetings. There is a lot of lead up to the meeting, and there's a lot of conversations that go on with different organizations outside of the meeting, which we try to tailor to get through those agendas. But again, I mentioned earlier, Council, that those agendas are pretty packed, but we really can't meet more often. I just don't see how we can tap our volunteers to meet more often. But there's a lot of material that needs to get pushed through, so I don't think there's any shortage of work for the next year. And the biggest thing for us when we became a combined department was ensuring stability for staff when you change leadership, when you have a lot of vacancies and you're bringing in new folks. Yes, you have to deliver services, but we have to maintain stability. We have to, make sure the department is functioning and the folks are happy that are here and excited about the change and the future. Because change management 101, so we can't lose sight of what we have to deliver for the residents, but we also have to consider our staff as we work through the process. So that was for 24, and next slide, 25's goals at a high level. This is a very high level. To evaluate the service delivery within social services in line with implementation of the social master plan. We're expecting to come back to Council with an update on some of the action items as soon as we can with the social master plan. Recreation is looking at an evaluation of the fee structure and updating that potentially for outdoor rec facilities. Part of that conversation has been ongoing for a couple of years, and it's based around a lot of anecdotal conversation with groups about, there's not enough of this or not enough of that, and we haven't had tremendous data. We've had a lot of things allocated but not necessarily used to their full potential. So we're looking at, is our current fee structure a barrier? Is that not in play? And how to potentially change that. I know the allocation policy has been revised once since we implemented it 4 years ago. We're looking at bringing that back in fall of 25, I think it is, Council, for potentially any more revisions. And that's an ongoing conversation we have with user groups about what's working, what's not, and what they'd like to see changed. And then the last bullet there is to improve and streamline service delivery within arts and culture and the events. Events are growing, arts and culture, when we talk about space that we're looking at now, and our Arts Advisory Committee is working on a council motion at the moment about how to potentially look at some stopgap spaces for art space. I won't use the term performing arts. I want to just use art space in whatever form that takes, as well as the new grant program. And there's a lot of work going on there and a small team, but there's a lot of need out there. There's a lot of things that we're trying to help support. The goal would be to get a lot of our community groups stronger, more sustainable, so that they would be able to deliver services for the community on their own in whatever way they want, and it takes some of the burden off our team. So I think that is it, Council. So I rambled a bit there, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Suter. I will take our Madam Clerk's opinion, and this time we'll put the motion on the questions from Council and discussion on the motion on the report for information from Mr. Suter. So with that, I will move that this update report be received for information. With that, Council, I'll open up to members of Council for questions and comments on the report. First off, we have Councillor McCook. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that thorough rundown. Appreciate the background as well as to why the two departments kind of merged together. I think that's good context to have. There's always a lot going on in both rec and community services, so and lots of really valuable work that happens in our community. Just a few questions. Are we replacing Ms. Mancher's position?
Thanks for the question, Councillor McCook. Yes, that position has been filled.
It has.
And he has already attended one of our Arts Advisory Committee meeting with myself and been introduced to that group, and has already been fully immersed in the grants, the major project and operating grant program, working with groups to make sure that their grants have been coming in on time and they've met the criteria for the next step in that. So I think he's been on the ground about 3 weeks now, and he's been very busy, and he's met some of our folks that Ms. Mancher would have worked with closely in the arts and the events and the grants programs and spaces. So yeah.
Okay, great to hear. I know that was a key position especially in the grants piece and stuff like that, and helping out some of the committees and stuff. So good to hear that that's done there. We also heard a lot of really great feedback regarding the waiting room for recreation. So that's been a good change for registration. Day camp participation, is that up or down?
I don't know if I have last year's.
Okay.
No, I don't have last year's numbers, so
okay.
I can't speak to that. Sorry.
It's okay. And then since we've lowered the cost to book out rooms for meetings for nonprofits, have we seen an uptick in usage at all, or I'm maybe putting you on the spot for numbers again?
Put me on the spot for numbers. I can't. I won't answer that. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that something you could maybe get back to us with?
Certainly. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next, we have Councillor Markgraf-Swain, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk. Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. A lot in there. That's a big portfolio, so thanks for taking that on. And the change management in there is going to be critical. It has been critical, so thanks for doing that. I just wanted to acknowledge the community programming registration process. Fair to say I've been critical, probably too critical, of how we've been through that. Skeptical of the changes, but as you mentioned, definitely delivered on whatever day that was. I think even the slight hiccup, the communication was there and clear. So just want to take the time to say thanks again for that, and I hope that continues. So I appreciate that. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk, followed by Councillor Barnhart. Steve, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Mr. Suter for the presentation. Just want to acknowledge the second or middle goal in the 2025 goals, to evaluate and update the fee structure for outdoor recreation facilities with improved usage data. I think you're bang on when you say anecdotes, because I think council and members of the public have been hearing anecdotally that this was booked and then not used, and that was booked and then not used. And if they're not going to use it, then why can't we, right? And I think some of this usage data exploration that you're going to do is probably going to inform some of those conversations and turn some of those anecdotes into data. So I just a comment, just really want to acknowledge the importance of identifying that as a 2025 goal, as basically we're fine-tuning the scheduling. That's what we're into right now. We're just fine-tuning it to try and make sure that all the facilities are used to their maximum capacity. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Telebas. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much, Mr. Suter, for, I really do appreciate all the numbers, the detail. That's helpful to get kind of a sense of how programs are being used, what the uptake is, and the priorities that you've set. Worked in an integrated community services department myself for many years, so I know lots of what's going on is across many different lines of work. So it's challenging to say the least, but it does get to the outcomes that we're looking for. So I really do appreciate that. Two questions. One is regarding the arts, and the slide that says arts and culture, and then the four graphics there. Kind of looking for a little bit more in terms of the arts, and I appreciate that a lot of the work is being done by community groups and volunteers who are getting grants, and other than the advisory committee. So I'm just wondering if in the future there's a potential to bring back some of the trends, some of the programs, some of the things that are happening with the help of the grants, so that we get a better sense of what the challenges and the trends are in that whole area, because there's a lot going on there. Having sat through some of the grants for the arts community, I think council would benefit, and the community would, in knowing what kinds of things are being pursued and how much work is actually being done there, thanks to the grants that are coming from the taxpayers. So I think that would be very helpful. And last but definitely not least is my favorite area, that's FCSS. And just want to make sure that we continue to grow those services if we can. I know it depends very much on the provincial grant, but with our population growth, I know that brings in more dollars for us to put towards preventive social services. So I'm a little surprised the numbers seem low. Maybe I'm not being fair there, but it seems to me that we would have greater participation from a population the size that we're at now. And I'm just wondering, maybe that's a question. Mr. Suter, are you noticing that I know you're working on it. The social master plan is definitely something that's in your 2025 goals. Is there any comment you'd like to make on that?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Barnhart. There's an asterisk with those statistics for FCSS, and I think part of that's driven by the fact that the data that we have has not been good as far as how it's been captured. It's been inconsistently captured, if I'm being blunt, I suppose, in that regard. So we are fixing that now. We're looking at a consistent program for intakes, referrals, so that it doesn't matter who comes or goes. We know the data. We've got it there in a consistent manner, the way it should be. So I think looking forward, we should have way more accurate numbers. Agreed with you. They don't maybe seem like the highest number, but again, if you only have a few people over there when you think about a couple people trying to deliver programs. So we've got a new manager in place in that area. I'm very excited with how things are going so far. And we've got another new programmer over there recently. So yeah, we're excited about the future there, and we're not losing sight of the value that provides for the residents here that need to take advantage of our services. So yeah, good. And it goes back to everything that we talk about. I mean, there's a lot of data that we're missing, which helps drive both administrative decisions and then up to council decisions, and we're trying to get better at that. It's just it's a lot of areas we're trying to do at the same time, so it does take time and to get to where we want to be. So
it's hugely important. So I support what you're doing there and look forward to seeing more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Telebas. Nathan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Suter, for the report. A lot of good information here. I guess, first off, just a general question. And I know we talk about the positives of integrating community services as well as with the recreation side of things. But obviously, any integration like that comes with its challenges. Are you pretty confident that the same level of service is being provided to each department, given that they've been combined? Is there a shortfall in any department, or are we pretty strong in delivering?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor. The change has been, challenging for some, I would suggest, but new manager in that area, lots of great ideas moving forward. At the end of the day, it's one department, and the positive feedback we have heard, because at the end of the day, we're delivering the residents at the end. It doesn't matter what whether you're a lifeguard or you're driving the Zamboni or you're you book in the field or you're delivering a referral in FCSS or you're looking after someone at the childcare. You're delivering a service, and so we're trying to get to a consistent model there across the board. So, and having everyone more collaboratively work on that and talk to each other and lessons learned throughout the area, that can do nothing but enhance what we're doing, because it breaks down any previous barriers we may have had there, any silences that we may have had in the past where we either missed, there's a gap and we're not talking, or we're overlapping and duplicating. We don't want to be doing that. That's counterintuitive to our efficiencies, right? So we're looking at a consistent model for our service delivery. So I would say that there's nowhere to go but up as far as that goes.
Perfect, thank you. So kind of from what I'm hearing, it's mostly positive, and you're ready to take on another department down the road?
No. But thank you for your compliment.
Just to add to that, I know there was mention of obviously more user groups using the facilities, but I know we're running into some scenarios where user groups aren't getting enough allocation just because it's shared across all user groups. So obviously something I know that everyone will have their eye on in the future as to how we can resolve that, and really the only answer is growth. So I know it's part of our plans down the road. One last concern I just had, and this was raised in regards to the scaffolding that's on the soccer / football turf field, is just the temporary scaffolding there, although it's industrial and I'm not questioning its integrity, the worry is that it's accessible by children, and there's a potential for a fall. Just where the ladder is not locked up, it can just be accessed if they jump the fence. So just something to throw on the radar. It's a concern that's been raised by quite a few of these user groups. Just that if some kids are fooling around one evening and hop up there and fall, it could be pretty serious. So I just want to raise that concern.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I have no further comments or questions. My questions were already answered by everybody else. Again, Mr. Suter, great report, great work on getting these two departments put together. It all makes sense how you laid it out to us, and it's very, very interesting how this is going to go forward into the future. So with that, seeing no further comments, members of council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion. Before you could, Ms. Plesher, you please begin the voting process.
Thank you.
Sorry, next on our agenda is item 7.5, 3471, request to waive property tax late fees, roll 008. Your microphone is on.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before Council is a report with a request to waive property tax penalties under Section 3471 of the Municipal Government Act. The report outlines the request as well as administration and Council's role in addressing these requests. Cancellation, refund, reduction, or deferral for any or all property impacts all property owners, as these amounts must be made up. So it is imperative that Council exercise the authority in a manner that is fair and equitable to all property owners. In order to maintain this equity, administration would only recommend that Council grant a Section 3471 request if there was an error in fact, either in the assessment, calculation of taxes, or assessment and penalties. However, that was not the case in this request.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. I will make the motion based on the report, and I'll go to Councilor Telebus for initial comments as you click it off consent agenda. I'll come to you right away. So, Madam Clerk, you put the motion on the screen from the report, please. I'll move that the request to waive property tax penalties in 58 pertaining to Roll 008322 be denied. With that, Councilor Telebas, you have the floor if you wish to speak to the motion, please.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. As I'm sure everyone's familiar with now, I've kind of made it my thing to remove some of these from the consent agenda, being that I think it's critical that everyone's given the opportunity to explain their circumstances, and depending on the circumstances, potentially granting some kind of change or potentially eliminating some of these additional fees that are incurred. This is a good example where had someone showed up and explained their situation, there's definitely a potential for the individual to convince council to potentially relieve them of that tax penalty. There's mention of some potential medical issues that I think are important, but without being provided additional information, I'm unfortunately going to have to continue to agree with the motion that has been put forward. But had I had additional context, potentially my mind could have been changed. So I just encourage everyone to who files an appeal or a concern relating to property tax that they come here, present their case, and have the opportunity to express their concerns.
Thank you, Councillor. Any additional discussion from members of council on the motion before you? Seeing none, Ms. Pleshy, would you please initiate the voting process on the motion? Mr. Telebas, can you please vote? Or did you hit the button? It seems to be a little wonky today. Yep, it's popped up. It's popped up now. Thank you. The motion carried unanimously, 7-0 in favor of the motion. Thank you, Ms. Morrison. And Ms. Morrison, you're back up on the next item, which is also 7.6. Roll 000040. Ms. Morrison, you have the floor.
Thank you. Similar to item 7.5, this is a report to request to waive property tax penalties under Section 3471 of the Municipal Government Act. Again, in order to maintain equity amongst all property owners, administration would only recommend that council grant this Section 3471 request if there were the areas, any area as mentioned before.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Would you please, Madam Clerk, put the motion on the screen? I'll follow the same procedure and give Councilor Telebas the opportunity to speak to it once I make the motion in this tax penalties in the amount of $2,559.82 pertaining to Roll 000040 be denied. I'll not speak to the motion at this time. Councilor Telebas, you have the floor if you wish it.
Perfect. Thank you. I would like to speak to this one, I guess, a little bit more, just in the fact that if this statement is true, it would appear that this would be an administrative error in terms of handling a check. Now, again, it's a word versus another person's word. So I'm just wondering if we have the potential to review some video footage to just see if this is an accurate statement.
C.O. Schwartz, give me a second to get your mic on here. It's on.
Yeah, no, we don't have video, but what we do have is a question to the person about the check and whether they went to the bank and canceled it. That would have been a proof that there was actually a check, and the answer was no, they did not. So, probability is they didn't put it in the box.
Thanks, C.O. Schwartz. Councillor, any further questions on this one?
No, so again, we didn't have any insight to that information. So given that additional information, again, I'm going to have to align with this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Penrod, I believe you have your hand up to speak. You have the floor, sir.
Thanks, Mayor Daniluk. I won't belabor it much further, but I did just want to speak up just to emphasize it's not just Councillor Natellenboss's thing or piece that he's finding interest or taking interest in. I think the MGA is clear. Council's not to delegate this role to administration. Currently, the process is that folks who express concern about penalties being levied for late fees are directed to appeal, maybe not directed to appeal, but I think it's clear that they're being advised by administration, as is appropriate, that they have every right to appeal. And so it looks like we have kind of an uptick in people taking advantage of that. So I'll just reiterate what Councillor Natellenbos said. I think council is here ready to make decisions with an open mind from meeting to meeting. It's really hard to make a decision without being able to ask questions to the person making the appeal. So I just reiterate what Councillor Natellenbos said, that if you are appealing, I think it'd be in your best interest to attend a meeting in person. And I know that administration is advising people of their right to do that. But I just hope they're hearing that loud and clear. That's everything. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk. Stephen, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to Councillor Penrod, because you just reiterated one of the points I want to reiterate, is that we heard last meeting that these were pulled off the agenda from administration, that, attempts are made to have folks come forward, right? But what I do want to point out is that I don't know that the open forum piece that would be used for a person to come in is going to result in what is expected. What I wouldn't say that administration would be prepared to do would be to hold a investigation of this situation in an open forum process. I don't think that's appropriate. And although, the MGA states that, I completely agree, right? But, here we are saying that if someone was in front of us to explain themselves and we could ask questions, sure, that's going to get that piece out there, and we take people at their word. But, my response to that is administration has done homework and diligence on those events. So if we were going to have someone up here and hold an investigation in council, I would be putting a motion forward for administration to do more work on that outside of this venue. So I don't think it's appropriate to expect someone to come in here, be put under investigation, put administration in a position where we're saying, are you sure you did your work right? I just don't think that's a fair spot. And, I understand, Councillor Natellenbos, how you're being consistent on this, and I've explained in the past where and why I'll be consistent on this with my approach as well. And I just really want to consider those thoughts as we keep pulling these off the agenda. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Penrod, a quick follow-up.
Yeah, thanks. So I did make a councillor inquiry at a last meeting, and I think you could expect a notice of motion coming forward at some point as I do some more research as to what the best way to proceed would be. I think it was Councillor Monkoff-Swain that said a few months ago, maybe we need to take a look at this process, because it seems like the process is not doing maybe everything that we want it to do. And I agree with you fully that an open public meeting is maybe not the best opportunity, and I can understand why people might not want to come and kind of plead their case for all to hear, right? So, expect that coming forward at some point.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Telebas, and we'll go to the vote. You have the floor, Nathan.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it. I just want to add to that, because although I do appreciate that, we have confidence in our administration, and I'm not questioning that, but an example was given where not all the information was shared. So had I had that additional information, potentially it would change the approach. But I think it's critical that we do hear everyone's circumstances, because it changes case by case. And depending on the circumstances, as we're all aware, council has every right to potentially overturn that decision. So, that's where I'll remain, and those will be my final words. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, a quick follow-up. Actually, I'll go to Madam Clerk first, then I'll come to Steve. Madam Clerk. Hang on. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I just kicked Councillor Van Nieuwkerk off, so if he just wants to bring in again there. I do want to provide a comment to Councillor Natellenbos. We did redact the reason why this person came forward for the ask, and did leave in that it was a medical condition, and took out the reason for it, as we did consider it was extremely confidential, and with it being a public agenda. Should council want to know what that item is that we did redact, we could go into a closed session and discuss that separately outside of the public.
Thank you. Councillor Sorry, Councilor Van Newkirk, you have the floor. Oh, hang on, I had it on there for a second. Now it's on, there you go.
Thank you. Just a question for administration. What opportunity exists to provide an extra layer of information, as Councillor Natellenboss has suggested, right? Like, I don't know where you start and stop with that when you're trying to explain situations and, he said, she said, and this and that. Like, just looking to administration to see, like, if there were more information provided, what would that even look like?
CO Schwartz, you want to jump in on that one? Hang on. I keep touching the screen, Madam Clerk, and it doesn't want to open the microphone for CO Schwartz. Hang on. There we go.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm going to just roll it back a little bit and go back to the MGA and remind everybody that it is the property owner's responsibility to pay their taxes, plain and simple. If it's a medical condition or any other condition, it's still required to pay their taxes. If they're deceased, they're required to pay their taxes. So I have yet in my career to find an extenuating circumstances that says you don't need to pay your taxes. Oh, by the way, your neighbor's going to pay that. So I really couldn't come up with a suggestion of more information that could come forward that would excuse somebody from paying their taxes.
Pardon me. Thank you, CO Schwartz. All right. Councilor Telebas, I'm going to call the vote right away here, so one more quick comment and we'll move on.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I guess just to Ms. Winters here, just in regards to just the comment there, that wasn't the one that I was referring to. It was more so the check and that it actually wasn't canceled. So just additional insight there, because again, that would have been seen as an administrative error potentially, assuming that the statement was valid and correct. So that would be a scenario where it would be nice to have that additional information. But thank you.
Hey, Councilor Penrose, I see your hands up now. You have a very quick comment, and now I'm going to call the vote.
Yeah,
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Respectfully and for clarity, I don't think that anyone is talking about residents being excused from paying their taxes. The only thing we've ever considered under these Section 347 bracket 1 requests is potential to forgive late fees on taxes that have come in late. Is it a resident's obligation to pay taxes on time? 100%. But life happens and there are extenuating circumstances, and we have a process for people to make an appeal, and people are just availing themselves of that. I think to characterize this as though we're contemplating letting people not pay their taxes is just a misrepresentation of what's going on here. Thank you.
CO Schwartz, make a comment, and I'm calling for the vote after this. CO Schwartz, you have the floor.
Yeah, and just to clarify, you're putting words into my mouth. At no point did I say people are excused from paying their taxes or that that's acceptable. They are required to pay them on time, and if they don't, then they're assessed a penalty, and they're required to pay that as well, or it gets spread out across the tax base. So absolutely, council has the right to overturn that decision, and as I've said, in my career, I've never seen it done, because I haven't found those extenuating circumstances that get around the MGA. That's the point I was trying to make.
Thank you, CO Schwartz. With that, I will ask council to vote on the motion before you. Please initiate the voting process, Ms. Pleshy. The motion carries unanimously, 7-0 in favor of the motion. Thank you, council. Next on our agenda is trail connection feasibility. Madam Clerk, would you connection feasibility? Madam Clerk, would you please put the motion, oh, hang on. Madam Clerk. Okay, I keep touching the screen here and it's not opening. There you are.
Thank you, Mayor. This touchscreen doesn't work on that anymore. You have to hit the next request down at the
Okay.
bottom.
Thank you.
I did, before I share this here, I did want to make mention that there has been a slight amendment to this notice of motion. It doesn't change the actual motion. It just changes in which administration will be bringing the information forward. So I just want to preface that before Councillor Van Newkirk has his motion and brings it forward for debate this evening.
Thank you. Councillor, you concur with the proposed change? Thank you. In a moment, you'll have the floor when I get the mic up and running here. Councilman Newkirk, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that administration incorporate into the 2025 proposed capital budget a high-level cost estimate that explores the feasibility of a trail connection on the east side of 50th Street from Township 510 north to Larev, considering the following: the developer's responsibility in funding the trail connection, the acquisition costs of any land required to create the trail connection, all construction costs that would be associated with the trail connection, and the potential timing for construction in 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just speak to your motion. Please do.
Yeah, thank you. And first to the edits, just in consultation with administration, trying to stay streamlined, I guess, to some of the other items that are coming through in capital. We determined that it was better to make the changes that are highlighted in the strikeout. So that's where that comes from, Mayor and Council. Yeah, and just speaking to the motion, considering the approval of the development north of Beaumont and the significant investments that have been made in this area, tonight I'm asking for council support to direct administration to examine the trail linkage to Larev. Administration has addressed vehicular safety coming to and from Beaumont past Larev, and now I see it as our responsibility to examine how we're going to ensure the safety of pedestrians accessing the area as well. So just keeping it short and simple, and that's where I'm at, and we're just hoping for support of council on this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Members of Council have any questions for Councilman Newkirk on his motion? Seeing none? All right, Council, I'll ask you to vote for the motion before you. Please initiate the voting process. That carries unanimously, Council, 7-0 in favor of the notice of motion. Thank you, Councilman Newkirk, for bringing this forward. I look forward to seeing this in the future. Appreciate that. Next on our agenda is your councillor inquiries, responses, and reports. Councillor Penrod's inquiry was answered by administration. I believe Councillor McCook was answered by administration. I believe Councillor McCook has the councillor inquiry this evening. I'll wait till Madam Clerk puts on the screen. Make your inquiry. Make your inquiry.
Thank you, Mayor. My inquiry is to please provide information on what parameters are considered when constructing road intersections and provide information on if the city has considered adding in roundabouts to any intersections. Additionally, please provide information on what it would take for the city to consider roundabouts, and is there any opportunities for intersections to have roundabouts versus four-way stops?
Thank you, Councillor. Any additional councillor inquiries this evening? Seeing none, move on to our agenda then to CEO update. CEO Schwartz, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. The first item we have is, of course, the reference to September 30th, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Mayor Daniluk, I think you covered that off extremely well in the proclamation, so I won't go any further. Next item, users accessing on the mobile devices has increased by almost 20%. Our original target was 10. You can see there that the people are staying on longer, which means they're finding what they're looking for. Typically means they're finding what they're looking for, and the accessibility score is now 75. And before the industry average is 60. So that's outstanding, and I know that's been a real push by council, multiple councils, to get that website up and doing what we're hoping it to do, and it sounds like we're getting closer. Communications is implementing quarterly content audits and leading the ongoing work with departments to revise to make sure that it's relevant, accurate, and easy to read. From infrastructure's perspective, residents can drop off grass clippings and mulch at the operations yard Monday to Friday from 1 till 4 p.m. Municipal projects, happy to show that picture of the fireplace in the unnamed park at Centreville. Fireplace, it still requires the gas service to be connected to it, but it should be done right away. CO2 tank relocation to BSRC is underway. It was one of the capital projects for this year. Crosswalk lighting on 50th Street and 32nd Ave scheduled completed this fall, and there are 9 additional crosswalks to be upgraded this fall, winter, and we sent the locations of those by separate email. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, City Schwartz. I had a quick question. Crosswalks, is that the lighting system?
Yes,
Yeah, thanks. I couldn't remember the acronym for that. So.
the blinking lights.
Thank you for that. Any questions for CEO Schwartz on his update this evening? Councilor Van Newkirk, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And you may not have the layer of detail here, and that would be fine. A bunch of residents have reached out about what the 50th Street, 32nd Ave is going to look like. Is it going to be similar to Home Hardware with a stoplight, or is it going to be the arms with the blinking lights? I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not off the top of your head. Thank you.
CEO Schwartz.
I am not aware of that off the top of my head, but I will get an email out.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions for CEO Schwartz on his report? Seeing none, we move on to our agenda item. Next is 10.0, notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion from members of council this evening? Seeing none. Next on our agenda is our closed session. So, Madam Clerk, would you please put the motion on the screen, move into closed session. I'll make that motion, and then we can move into closed session and continue with our meeting. I move 4 p.m. No, I don't think so. 8:47 on this clock anyhow, p.m. pursuant to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, sections 21 and 24. Discussion of the motion, members of council. Seeing none, would you please begin, Ms. Plesher, the vote process to move into closed session. That carries unanimously, 7-0 to move into closed session. We'll take a moment and we'll shut down the live feed and begin our closed session when we are in closed. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Cheryl, for coming.